This is Water's Edge, and I'm John Waters. Join me as we have real conversations with the defenders and innovators shifting the balance of power in cybersecurity. Water's Edge is sponsored by iCounter, leading the third wave of cybersecurity with the industry's first counter-threat operating system. Kevin Mandia, thank you for joining me today on Water's Edge. Appreciate you taking the time, man.
Hey, I like the title, by the way. I didn't know that's what you were going to call it. Water's Edge?
Water's Edge, that's it.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, we both operated at the edge of security innovation for our entire careers, and both understood that we needed to maintain with pace with the adversary, which required us to be in the intelligence business. We took two very different approaches. You made a career and built a legendary reputation, educating the industry on how to investigate and respond to breaches, and built a wonderful company behind it. And I was so happy to be a part of it towards the end when we sold it to Google. So thanks for everything you've done for the industry.
Yeah.
So I've been both a friend and an admirer for 25 years. Learned a lot from you in the history. We're going to learn a lot from you today. So the audience, this is a special treat to have Kevin Mandia join us here. And I think as we move through the orientation of Kevin's history, how he developed and built companies through multiple economic cycles and the maturity of the cybersecurity industry, that really sets the context for how he's going to help us navigate the future of the cybersecurity industry.
Hey, you know, John, there are days where I wake up and I go, I'm going to live my life today. What would John Waters do? And I never do it, but I wish I would. You know what I mean?
That's funny, Kevin. Well, it takes all forms, right? Different styles, same mission. So let's go back to when we first met. 2002, November, Foxwoods Casino. I had bought iDefense out of bankruptcy for $10, didn't know what I was doing, new to the industry, and I realized I had to hire somebody to run this company. I flew up to Foxwoods Casino in the snow just to meet with you. We hung out a while, ended up playing bocce in the snow, and that's where our journey and our relationship began. And you made a great decision to go out on your own, but of course we stayed in touch over the last 25 years.
Yeah. It's weird how I remember that day with such clarity, because you did catch me at a transition time. You know, I remember the snow. I remember knowing I was going to be doing something different. You know, I enjoyed the Foundstone days, John. But the reason I remember it is how many folks say, hey, man, meet me tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll go play some bocce. In my whole life, no one's ever invited me to play bocce before. Start with that. And there was a foot of snow outside. And I showed up thinking there's no chance you were going to be there. And sure enough, you're there with a 12-pack of Miller Lights and waiting for me. So we played bocce in a foot of snow.
Yeah, that was crazy. We did play bocce in a foot of snow. And think about the Foundstone days. You, George Kurtz, Stuart McClure. I mean, you guys grew up to be legends in the industry. And those early days of cyber were really a lot of fun. So Kevin, we move on from the bocce in the snow. You stayed at Foundstone for another year, spun out on your own, started what I believe was Red Cliff Consulting, and then that became Mandiant. Tell me about those early formative days, what it was like to get in the game, the state of the industry. Help the audience understand what that early day of entrepreneurship looks like.
You know, it's not very flattering in a way when I describe it to myself. My internal voice is going to come out now. I remember thinking at the time, I was like 32 years old, 33 years old, John, and you know how you are at that age, you feel invincible. Yeah, I remember leaving Foundstone and starting my own company really because I felt I was the best in the world at incident response. Like it was confidence bordering on arrogance almost. It was obvious to me, and you know this because you are, in my opinion, the threat intel guy, because you kind of put all your chips on the table for threat intel. I remember thinking at the time, the best company in the world would have to be a company in cybersecurity that got closer to the adversary. So when we started Mandiant, I remember thinking, let's respond to every breach that matters, not to become an incident response company, by the way. It was to learn about the new and novel attacks and have first mover advantage with that intel. So even the name, you remember it was originally called Red Cliff. During World War II, I read, I think it's John Keegan's book on what's the, intelligence at war or intelligence in war. And I remember thinking during World War II, the Enigma decryption was being called Orange Leonards. You know, there was this whole thing that when the British were decrypting Enigma, they couldn't tell the world, hey, we can decrypt the German codes. So they had to come up with a cover story for it. So instead of calling Mandiant at the time, or I wanted to call it Orange Leonard, the best source of intelligence during World War II was Orange Leonard, whoever this Luftwaffe major was, and it was all fake. It was something else. So I read that intelligence and war book and started Mandiant because I felt we needed a better model in cybersecurity where you had to learn from the adversary. And Mandiant was supposed to be an endpoint company. I like to say I executed so poorly, nobody knows that, but we were responding to breaches as a means to an end to build a better endpoint that could detect all the attacks everybody else was missing. But you'd understand it because to me, we changed how threat intel was done. It became something that mattered. And, when we talk about Armadin later, I feel like it's really just another threat intel company in some ways. But it was the 33 years old, confident, had a skill set that was well oiled. I'd been doing it for 6-7 years for the US military. And what a great time to start a business, and then with Foundstone kind of going through the startup with George Kurtz, Stu McClure. There was a bunch of great talent there. Joel Scambry, just being young, hungry, it was just the perfect time to start a company. So,
it's really remarkable. The three of you guys built such incredible businesses. Two of the three building endpoint businesses, you building the incident response business and really launching that industry. And I helped pioneer the intelligence industry, but we're all getting to the intelligence quotient the same way. We all needed to understand the adversary so you can figure out how to defend against them. Intelligence leads operations, every element of warfare. It certainly was going to be warfare in cyberspace. So when you set the bar at Mandiant, you set it really high for you, your employees, for your customers in the industry. And that takes a lot of guts. When you go out to the marketplace and you are claiming that you're the best in the world at what you do, people expect performance. And man, you delivered. At every turn you delivered. And that's really what built the reputation and trust that you have in the industry today.
Well, we had no sales staff. So we started Mandia in February of 2004 as Red Cliff Consulting, kind of bootstrapped it. So we didn't take funding, didn't have board meetings. And we just really believed in the premise, if you make a customer happy, you just found your next 5 customers, word of mouth. And then we believed in a premise, John, that actually, I don't know if we had competition. That's why we were successful, is we believe security breaches were inevitable. And at that time, nobody did. So that meant we were it. So if you had a problem and you knew it, we became the number to call. And here's the weirdest thing. I have no idea how people found us, but we were doubling in size every year easily with no sales staff, no outbound. My cell phone would ring, no idea how people got it. And it'd be an inbound, hey, we've been compromised. We hear you're the guy to call. Maybe there's just nowhere else to turn. Maybe that's the only reason we won is there's nobody else. There's no other, 1-800 help us number. Yes.
Whatever it took, customers always knew you had their back. I mean, I worked side by side with you. And when there was a breach that happened, you were on it. Everybody in the company was on it, became top priority. Your reputation was at risk. The company's brand was at risk and you got after it. So that was really fun to see. And that's where the trust is built over time. So those early days of Mandiant, let's go through the recession of 2008 to 2012, where money dried up. There was no innovative capital. Banks stopped investing in cyber. And we saw that inflection point where cybercrime in 2009 surpassed narcotics as the most profitable line of business for organized crime. So that was a meaningful inflection point. You tend to see when there's innovation stagnation on defenders, you see innovation acceleration on attackers. China got in the game in a big way and moved forward, and you had a ringside seat to all that. So tell me what it was like with Mandiant going through that period of time. It kind of seems like you just skated through.
Well, I think you're right. The FBI did help bootstrap the company. And then, of course, China went on offense in 2004. It was the first time I saw what I saw in the military hit the private sector and went, okay, good timing. But 2008, we didn't even notice it. I mean, I read vaguely that there was a recession going on, but people were still being compromised. We operated profitably. Mandiant existed from 2004 to essentially 2014 for 10 years. We're profitable every year of our existence except one. We even bought a company for $10 million based on money we made. We had an EBITDA at one point We had 34 million in revenue and we had 17 million in EBITDA that year. So pretty thrifty, when you don't have a go-to-market team and you're doing inbounds. But at that scale, uh, at some point we took an investment and stuff. But back to your question, 2008, didn't even notice it. We just doubled in size.
Kevin, the reason the phone called is because you guys had the brilliant idea of training all the FBI forensics agents at Mandiant. So all these guys were in the field were getting calls for breaches, and they were saying the go-to guy in the industry is Kevin Mandia. So that's why your phone was bringing up. It was brilliant marketing. You didn't need a sales force. You had crazy inbound activity, and it was it was a great idea, and it obviously paid huge dividends.
Well, a lot. First off, back in 2007 or 2008, we didn't even know what to call that unit that was taking all the fingerprints of every intrusion we were responding to and codifying it, right? I remember we created a schema internally that nobody paid attention to called open indicators of compromise. We had like 735 criteria. As we responded to every breach, John, and we got the forensics, that trace evidence, we'd codify it, kind of bucketize it, and kind of track, oh, it's these guys or it's that group. And we really did it to scale our consulting. So when we did a phone call and we kind of diagnose what's going on, we go, oh, it's that group. And of course, we only named them by numbers because we don't have hesitation,
Okay, so now we're coming out of the recession, Kevin. It's 2012, 2013. And what I always thought was a jack in the box moment, really for this whole cyber intelligence segment, was the APT1 report. You on the cover of Forbes and profiled Chinese nation state activity targeting the United States critical infrastructure. That was a game changer. Walk us through that.
That came about by Travis Reese and his team. Travis was president of Mandiant. He had a team of folks that just had the idea during the Chinese New Year in 2013. It was, to use a big term, it was multifactorial why we did it. You had Mike Rogers and the House Intelligence Committee wanting to do an information sharing law. And we felt, hey, he could use an example of how to share information. So there was that. There was dealing with the defense industrial base being compromised by China. All of them were compromised, but none of them were really talking. And there was just a confluence of events where our internal team, primarily former military from the United States, were like, let's just, during this Chinese New Year, burn their infrastructure, go out with 5,000 IPs they're using, go out with all the trace evidence, all the indicators, who they are, and just give the government kind of a tool to use to maybe have bilateral dialogue about rules of the road in cyber domain. So it came at me from the team, and all I did is edited the damn document, which, by the way, needed a lot of editing. But that came out it felt like the right thing to do, and the timing was right. And everybody inside baseball knew the Chinese were hacking everybody, but nobody was really talking about it. So, and I guess, David Sanger once told me, hey, you never thanked me, my words, not his. But in reality, David Sanger, Nicole Perlroth, that the intrusion in the New York Times might have been the catalyst for it as well, because they said they were going to go public about being compromised by China. And maybe without them, we wouldn't have done it. But there's so many factors that hit us. I had, Mike Rogers, I was like, I want to give him something to help him. Nicole Perlroth and David Sanger saying, hey, this is a big story. And by the way, I'll never forget the first time I ever talked to David Sanger, he goes, this is a big story. And I was like, no, it's not. No one's going to care. I mean, I randomly questioned him right to his face. No, you're wrong. But he was right. I was wrong. But it was kind of the team internally. There's former military folks that were like, we're tired of watching this happen. We're getting sucker punched in cyberspace. Let's do something about it. And we knew we were right. We had responded to that group 141 times, trace evidence aligned. We saw the building get built that they were using. So the team made it happen, a lot of other factors. And we went live. And I can tell you, I don't think I could have stopped it if I even tried. You know how sometimes you're a CEO and people are like, oh, you run the place. Loosely, I run 80%. There's always something going on you can't control. And, it was one of those. It came at me. I was like, hey, we don't have a choice. By the time it hit my desk, John, I knew The toothpaste was out. This team wanted to do it, and we were doing it, period.
Kevin, the one magic of the business model that enabled the report, really put you on the global stage at that time, was understanding of the adversary became table stakes. And that set the table for a massive expansion in the cyber intelligence industry, at that time. And the profile of the company began to raise to where you got a call from Dave DeWalt at FireEye. So tell me about that.
The way I remember it, Dave was on my board, and he called me up in October. And the reason I remember the moment is I was in Chicago in shorts and a t-shirt, but it was 40 degrees, and I think there might have been flurries, And I had this moment where I'm like finally going to get a workout after traveling, and startups, you had 25 pounds while you're working. And I remember I was going to the gym and I had a respite, and I was so excited. I'm like, finally, I can just go to the gym and get a workout. And all of a sudden, phone rings. I pick it up, and it's Dave. And he's just like, here's what we're going to do. And he just laid it out, and he got me pumped up, And I talked to the team about it. Hey, DeWalt wants to, buy us. He's at FireEye. They've gone public now. It was October of 2013. They went public September of 2013. And Dave's a force of nature. Like when he calls you and he's pumped up, you get pretty pumped up. He should have been a football coach. And it's, so I hung up the phone. I never made it to the gym. I turn around, I go back to the hotel, and I start calling the guys. Hey, listen, Dave wants to do something. And you can just feel the team going. We were at that stage, and you've been there, John, where you're looking at the team and you're like, hey man, the next step for us, we're at 100 million plus in revenues, 150 million in sales that year. And you're looking at it going, the next step is going public probably. And is this team the team to do it or not? And I went to every leader in Mandiant at the time, one-on-one, and said, hey, listen, Dave's got this thing he wants to do. Unanimously, every one of them wanted to do it. And I learned an interesting lesson then, because when I was done, then I thought to myself, do I want to do it? And it's already too late. When you have 8 people going, hey man, I want to do it. You just go, okay, well, I serve them and they want to do it. You're done. This wasn't about me it was never my company. I never liked the name Mandia. We had to change names at a time because Red Cliff somehow was taken, and we got sued and had to change our names in 2006. And, but I just remember that's how it went down. Dave got me totally pumped up. I believed in the story. FireEye was at that time the best line of defense. And I didn't have the skill sets Dave had. He's a go-to-market machine. And I was just a cybersecurity guy masquerading as a CEO. You told me once, remember when we were working together, you said you're a cybersecurity guy playing CEO, and I'm a CEO playing cybersecurity guy, And I was like, you're right. You got me pegged. When I was the CEO of Mandiant, I don't think my card ever said CEO ever, in the first 10 years. And there's several times where I tried to explore someone else doing it, because I always felt I don't know how to build a go-to-market. It was never important for me to run marketing and sales and legal and HR. In fact, I didn't enjoy running those things. So I remember just trying to give those things up. And, but anyway, back to the story. That's how it went down. Dave saw it, had a vision, brought them together. And man, he can get you pumped.
Yeah, that was a crescendo moment. And as I recall, it had a B handle on it. So I'd get out of bed for that too. So kudos to you. That was a big win. Okay. So you had a great run on the heels of the acquisition of FireEye. Business was booming. Growth was on fire. Dave was at the helm. You became president, chief operating officer, and everything looked great. We ended up bringing Eyesight into the fold at your recommendation. You merged Mandiant and Eyesight as one unit. And then the music stopped, certainly at the FireEye business. And the music just kept on rocking at the combined Mandiant and Eyesight business. So how is that to navigate a company? You'd never gone through a contraction like that at that time in your career.
Well, it's daunting, probably reserve some details, but filling DeWalt's shoes is unfillable. You know what I mean? We're very different. He's got an exuberance and excitement. I'm boring as hell. I'm the stoic military guy. Look at me. I mean, I'm in my dress shirt, John, I'm bored. And you come in after that, you're wondering, I'm not the fire up guy. I'm not the guy with these huge aspirations. Like Dave, one thing that I admired about him is, man, everything was possible to him. Period. Like he was like, oh, I can do this, I can do that, and it's cool to see it. And I don't have that. You have it. I've seen you do it. It's like your creativity. I get bogged down on how the hell do we do this? And sometimes, I've changed since then based on examples that I've learned from you. And you get to learn along the way from folks that are unbelievably creative with ridiculous energy. I had to grow still. I was not ready for that role. Deer in the headlights was right. I mean, well, let's face it, I needed a few drinks. You, I went from a guy, yeah, I was just a cybersecurity guy. I wasn't a public company CEO, and I'm not a marketing guy. I undersell and underpromise, and I don't have the same delivery Dave's got, where, and so I was worried, obviously, and I knew I could, create a roadmap for us and let's go do it. But I was always worried that I could get people, that I could motivate and push people like Dave could. You know what I mean? I'm not the locker room speaker guy. I was always a quiet guy on the field. Just play your part, do it as best as you can, lead through example. And I'm not a great communicator, at least at that point in my career. Honestly, John, people would come into my office and they would say, hey, and my internal voice was like, if I have to motivate you, what the hell? Come on, man. I didn't realize that's your job sometimes, getting people pumped up and galvanized and have them storm the castle. That was not in my nature at that time.
Well, either way, it was a heck of a ride. We worked together through the teens, helped the guild acquiring other businesses, really pouring fire on the growth elements of the business. And, as you know, my whole objective almost from day zero was how we liberate the really solid branded assets under the Mandiant brand and create a world-class company.
It was. And in hindsight, you always go through it better the second time, I think, but yeah, I had a lot of lessons to learn. I took all of it. I remember early on, we went from 97% year over year growth in the Q1 of 15 to like negative 22% growth in our product business. Basically 70% of our business was in a decline, right? And so Dave steps out and I come in, and one of the first things we did is cut 20% of the cost. And I remember one day, we had a campus there with buildings, multiple buildings, and all the engineers were in a different building. And I walked out of the building, where my office was. I was in Dave's old office. And when I walked out, like two engineers came out the engineering building, saw me and turned around and went back in. And that told me everything I needed to do a job. Like that was my welcome. I was like, oh, okay. I was like this pariah, and they were like, there's the axe man. There's the guy that's going to change this company. But we didn't have much choice. And you learn a lot then that, I didn't go to business school for 3 years and I'm not a clinical stare at the spreadsheet and make a call. At that time, I knew everybody, so it just felt a little harder. And then I never understood the practice of building way out in front of your skis. And over time, with more experience, you start getting, hey, your expense for, like, my sales expense in 2027 is all about the 2028 goals. You know what I mean? But my mind didn't work that way back then. There was no question. That was the struggle for me to figure out how do we make the turn, because it was the tale of two cities, right? We had one business going like this and one business going like this. And it took me 7 years to get, the growth part to be the bigger part. In hindsight, it probably should have taken 3 or 4. But you live and you learn,
Well, as you look back in history, as you mentioned with APT1, your CEO, which got about 80% of it, the rest of it is this thing that happens around you based on the leadership team you brought in. And by force of nature, ultimately, we're able to find the right home for FireEye, liberate Mandiant and all the growth assets under the Mandiant brand, ring the bell on NASDAQ. And then that was the perfect buyer in Google for those quality assets and companies and relationships that we had built at the time. It gave them a trusted brand for the Google Cloud business. And it was a great outcome for our customers, for our employees, and for our shareholders. That's the trifecta in business. If you can find all 3 of those lining up, that's a great outcome. So that was a Heck of a ride and an incredible outcome for Mandiant.
John, what's interesting about that is we knew that overnight. Like when in that April night where I was drinking beers with you at or wherever, Dave and Buster's, what a great place to strategize, right? I remember thinking right then and there, we've got to have a separation over time. We had conjoined twins and one was unhealthy at that point. It wasn't coming back. And so how do you manage that? And one of the most important lessons I learned, and that was the window of 2016, really to 2022, right? Where we had to do that turn. And I respect any leader that has to go through something like that because it is grueling. When you're doing a multi-year plan and there's nothing fancy about it. It's like enduring it. It's plodding through a marathon and every step you're like, I just got to keep going, you know?
Yeah.
But I remember somewhere during that, there was a guy on our board named Bob Switz. I love Bob. And one day I'm at a board meeting. You know how I am at board meetings. I slump in my chair after an hour and I'm like, oh man, just when's this going to end? I got to get better at that, I'm still trying to improve. And I just remember Bob in the middle of a board meeting go, you know what your problem is? And I remember slumping in my chair going, Jesus, what's he going to tell me? What's wrong with me now? And Bob said, your problem is you were in the military. And I was like, I'm confused. He goes, you were in the military, so you believe people are going to do what they say they're going to do, and they don't. And it hit me right then and there. He's right. That was my problem. What we were trying to do at FireEye is pivot all students from mature products that were starting to decelerate, try to take the resources into the growth products. And I would go to a meeting and say, hey, we got to move these 40 people somehow from there to here. And then I'd walk out going, that'll happen. And it never happened. You know what I mean?
Okay, Kevin, now we move into the future. We move past the Google acquisition. You did your tour duty there, got back in the game initially with Ballistic, and now operating your own business as CEO of Armadin. And we enter into a completely unknown future in an age of AI where time goes away, latency goes away, and you need to move at the speed of light to be able to counter adversaries in real time. It's a whole new game. So when you think of the industry that you and I helped build, the intelligence industry, it relied on one simple trait. Adversaries would continue to use the same plays and leverage the same tools and tradecraft that they did over and over again. So patient 0 would inform patients 1 through N on how to defend against that same attacker. Well, the world changes now, and a lot of those attack methodologies will not be replayed again. So now we're entering an age of real-time counter threat ops, real-time, all the time, autonomous control setting and exposure management. So when we sit through the challenges ahead of us, I know this drives you and it certainly drives me. How do you think about in this AI-enabled adversary state, nation states, terrorist groups, obviously criminals, how we're going to defend national interests and all of our allies around the world in this new era as defenders and as, mission-oriented guys? Where's your head at on that?
Well, and it's after 30 something years of doing this, John, every once in a while I get to have very candid conversations with CISOs, and it's kind of nice, right? And you get the same thing. People see me not just as CEO of Armadin or a vendor, but as a trusted advisor, because I do feel the pain. The true north for every single CISO right now has to be effective autonomous security. You can't have a human in the loop for massive amounts of what we're going to be up against in the future. So I'd tell you a couple fundamental truths, in my opinion. Number one, virtually all attacks in the cyber domain will be AI led in under 2 years, and probably they already are. All right. So you got that. Second, because AI is going to be doing the attacks, it's at a scale, speed, and scope where you're going to have to start removing the human from a lot of the loops, like detect and respond. We have this, at Armadin where we're creating offense, and I'll get back to the fundamental truths, but a quick injection. We have a lot of folks that say, test our capability, like purple team us, and let's check our detection skills. They don't work. The reason why is we get in and proliferate so fast and violently that by the time they even detect us, John, we're done. We've already done whatever we got to do. So the speed, scale, and scope of AI is going to change how the SOC operates. It has to become autonomous. does. The fastest way, period, to have effective autonomous security is you have to have the good guys build AI on offense and the good guys build AI on defense, and the offense trains the defense. And because all the attacks are going to be bespoke to you, bespoke to your people, bespoke against your infrastructure, because AI can think and learn and has total recall. And so the attacks are just going to be way faster, every rock unturned. And there's a neat moment right now, John, where there's almost a desperation on defense. Are we ready in the post-Mythos world? So everybody's running around doing source code tests. But I think that's the biggest change is you're going to have to, I used to always have the security gap slide at Mandiant, where tech's going, we're proliferating tech faster than our means to secure it. That's even more so today than ever before. So how do you cover that gap? We always said with Intel. Well, now it's at a speed where that Intel's got to happen. We have almost like a moral imperative to find the intel before the bad guys even use it, before bad guys even attack you.
Right.
So I think at Armadin, the new company that I'm CEO of, that's our goal. That's our imperative. Build an offense that's better than what we're up against in all modalities so that we can train your defense before the bad guys even hack you. We got to have it. I almost call it, John, the third wave of Intel. Wave number one was like Symantec and McAfee. And they would say, hey, man, if our antivirus misses something, can you send it to us? As if, my mom's going to find malware on her computer. Instead, it did, right? The second one was ours, right? Like to respond to breaches or create a global network of intel gathering, right? Where you're doing research. That was, let's go find the new and novel as fast as we can and bake it into our products. And Mandiant did that with incident response, and you did it with global intel analysts. The third wave is we got to create it ourselves. And that's my opinion. And I think we're going to be up against AI on offense. I thought about it. The way we always bucketized and categorized APT1 versus APT4 versus APT6, it's all going to kind of come together to where we're going to catalog, they're using that model to attack us when they do this, or this model when they do that, because that's kind of going to be it. I think there's going to be, and then all the attacks will be sort of bespoke against the custom apps or the people targeted or the companies and the infrastructure targeted. So it's just going to change. And you didn't want to sit it out. So you're back in the game. I didn't want to sit it out. And because I felt it was too important. And the neat thing about it is, to use one of your favorite phrases, near-term pain for long-term gain. That's what we're going to get out of AI. A little bit of near-term pain. Mythos and the models on offense do advantage the offense. And the day of remediation reckoning is here. We just got to clean it up now. But fast forward a year from now, you're going to see a lot more automation that is effective, absolutely validated, constantly tested, because I do believe the good guys can build the ultimate cyber cannon to constantly barrage the good guys' AI and defense so we can think and learn and adjust at the speed of compute. So it's going to be a pretty interesting time and one where, we got to see it through.
Well, Kevin, I, for one, am glad to have you back in the fight. The nation's better with you in it versus on the sidelines. And I'm happy to be a participant again, in the industry and helping shape the future. You and I are aligned even down to the language on we're entering the third wave of cybersecurity, which is an AI native era. Armadin's approach is spot on in my view. I think you'll probably learn more about iCounter, that we really are aiming right at that intel-led security segment in a AI native world and approach. And together, working side by side in the industry, I think we're going to do great things. So I really appreciate the fact that you got back in the fight, and it's good to be back fighting with you.
Yeah, in all my years of cybersecurity, the direction's been more obvious. You know that, John? Like, if you think about it, if you're a CISO right now, you've got to look at your entire stack, all your tech, all your people, and get ready for the AI world. And the true north is effective autonomous security. You just got to feel confident you can withstand what's going to be coming. And what's weird for me is I look at what Armadin can do on offense. We haven't seen it in the wild yet. We're getting almost like a gift from organized crime and the nation states that they're not fully flexing the muscles in the AI world yet, for whatever reason. Maybe it's cost, they can't get GPUs, nations are holding back based on doctrine, whatever it is. but that phase will go away as the compute costs go down and it's more readily available. So we're seeing like light use of AI, in my opinion, compared to what it's capable of doing in the cyber domain. So the world will change. We need to be a part of doing that. But I'm sure you're having fun. Like the best part about it is every CEO I talk to and every CISO I talk to, um, let's put it this way: we all predate AI, right? Our experience, the vast majority of our careers will be spent where there may not even be in cell phone technologies. We weren't, used to that even. So when you meet these folks, all of them recognize the most important thing is to keep learning, period, more than ever before. Just like stay sharp, find your data sources, read, listen, and keep learning. Because I'm not convinced any CEO is fully sure of how AI is going to transform their business or impact their business 5 years out or 3 years out or 1 year out.
Kevin, as you wouldn't be surprised, we look at the future the same way, and we look at the history very similarly, having lived it the same 25, 30 years. First wave of cyber was whack-a-mole. Second wave of cyber, I call it where's Waldo? You understand the adversary and their attributes. How do you find them and get rid of them? Third wave of cyber, there was a TV show called Person of Interest. I think it came out around 2012. It's basically taking all live NSA feeds, instrumenting that into an AI engine to predict and prevent terrorist activity in near real time. But that was using humans at the edge to actually counter those terrorist acts. If you think of that model in AI speed, that's basically what we're building at iCounter, to instrument all of the collection engines and move that directly into a counter threat operating system to counter threats in near real time. I think that's the future, and that's where we're playing. I look at the technology sector as effectively orchestrating viruses and vaccines, right? So you release a new 0-day and you've got every possible exploitation pathway already understood, and you've got those vaccines applied to all of your various tech layers. So the tech layer is the virus vaccine orchestration, the continuous exposure management and control plane requiring, autonomous red teaming, continuous assessment activity and closing out gaps. That's Armadin's place. And iCounter is that Intel-led security, driving a counter threat operating system for the future. That's the way I'm kind of seeing this come together. How do you see it, Kevin?
You look at what the frontier labs are doing, John. You wonder, how long does IP really exist? How long does intelligence exist? The analyst role is really getting impacted by AI. I'll have Gemini and Cowork on at the same time, half of today, doing things for me. And it's changing how I think and what I rely on and how productive I am. And even today, I'm less awed now, but I remember my whole job used to be take an 8-page document, read it, distill it down, and as CEO of the company, make the message easy. AI does that now, and it does it really fast and really well. And you look at it and go, whoa, that's real good. So I think nowadays, one of the first things you got to recognize as a leader of a company is speed counts more than ever before. You better have a team that can adapt and work feverishly to stay, 3 months, 5 months ahead. And what I love about Armadin is pretty measurable. We've got to be the first to find remote code execution on your network. We got to be the first to find vulnerabilities that are exploitable and build a better cyber cannon than what we're up against.
Yeah.
Hell, if we're 5 days ahead of the bad guy, everybody's going to have some kind of, I call it field dressing, compensating control ahead of any attack. And by the way, fast forward 10 years from now, it's probably seconds ahead. Where the good guys AI on offense is patching something seconds before something's tapping on the door to see if there's a vulnerability there.
Yes. Kevin, I completely agree with you. And that's where we share very common DNA. If you're not setting out to be the best in the world at what you do, stay on the sidelines. So you're back in the game, I'm back in the game, and I'm pretty sure that means that we are both mission driven to create the best companies in the world at what we do. And let's flip back to that DNA and go back to Kevin long, long time ago. So you're growing up in a town in Pennsylvania. Tell me about that. I believe you had 4 brothers or 3 brothers. So tell me where you fit in the age stack and how it was like growing up in Pennsylvania.
The youngest of 4 boys.
I bet they taught you a lot early on.
Growing up in Pittsburgh in the 70s and 80s, it's a great place to grow up because it's a great place to leave. Sorry, Pittsburgh, but I'll never forget best day of my life. I was driving out of Pittsburgh to go to college, or you're just thinking back, hey, got out. It was the summer jobs everybody fought to get were literally at steel mills, literally. And I remember going, man, maybe this year, I could get one of those. Isn't that crazy? In the 70s and 80s, in the late 80s, when I was thinking about graduating college or graduating high school, my older two brothers never went to college, and my immediate brother did. And I don't even remember my dad saying, "Hey, man, did you apply to a school?" I just did it. You know, so different times, a lot less supervision back then, and maybe that helps. But Pittsburgh, it's allegedly a great city now. I'm afraid to go back.
Well, you got out of Pittsburgh, but you didn't get out of Pennsylvania. Went to Lafayette, played football, studied computer science, and that really launched your career, and clearly never wavered from that focus on computer science and forensics. Carried through to a master's degree, went into the military, and then you're launching your career after the military. Well, we've been through the ringer the last 25 years as an industry, as a country, and as practitioners. And that experience, that road wear, gives us practical application into the future where you got a lot more experience, a little more money in the bank, and you're well positioned to win. I feel the same way, and we're going to get after it in the industry here in coming years. So, work stuff's over. Kevin, I know you have always struggled between this. You never thought of it this way, but I understand you pretty well. Would you rather be a rock star or a pro athlete?
Man, you just stumped me. That's like being born blind or no arms. You know what I mean? These are some questions that just stump me. Wow. Yeah, probably got to go with athlete on that one.
Good for you, Kevin. That is the safer answer. But if any of you question, given the struggle Kevin had with the answer to that question, whether he really loves to play the guitar or I really love to play the guitar, one of us will be playing the guitar at the House of Blues in Black Hat Wednesday night, House of Blues. Kevin and I have a fireside chat before, and we're going to have a heck of a show. It should be an awful lot of fun. Got a band coming in from Dallas, and Kevin or I may be joining the band. We'll see how it goes.
John, I can't wait to see you up there, man, singing Guns N' Roses.
Thank you for joining us, everyone, in our first session of Water's Edge podcast. Kevin, thank you, buddy. You made this a great one, and I appreciate you willing to do this. And it speaks the world about our relationship, your leadership, and we expect great things from Armadin, and expect a great night at Black Hat. So we'll see you folks next time. Take care. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at watersedgepodcast.com. Water's Edge is sponsored by iCounter, built to maintain pace with a modern adversary with its AI-native, Intel-led security platform, powering the industry's first counter-threat operating system. We don't just monitor threats, we counter them.